These are the top questions and storylines surrounding the Dolphins entering 2019 training camp. In many ways, matters with the Dolphins are completely different this season, and I'll outline most of those coming up, but in other ways, not much has changed, and that's where I want to begin. For the first time since 2012, we're not entering a training camp wondering about Ryan Tannehill. What's his upside? Is he a legitimate franchise quarterback? Can he stay healthy? Instead, there's some new blood in Miami's quarterback room in the form of Ryan Fitzpatrick and Josh Rosen, and we'll get to them in a moment. But just a refresher for those who listened to me last year when I provided my top storylines entering 2018, going back and looking at my notes, I said this 1 year ago about Tannehill. How will his performance affect the team's future? If he gets injured again or doesn't play well, we will likely be discussing an entirely new direction for the Dolphins at QB beginning in 2019. We could also be discussing new decision makers amongst the organization's brain trust. They have placed all of their faith in Tannehill. If it doesn't work out, will Mike Tannenbaum, Chris Greer, and Adam Gase be around any longer to determine the next QB of the future? Or in that hypothetical, will Tannehill take them down with him? That was what I said last year. And as we all know, Gase, Tannenbaum, and Tannehill were all jettisoned, with that trio landing in New York, Bristol, Connecticut, and Tennessee, respectively. I don't have anything personal against Ryan Tannehill, and he and his wife, Lauren, were always kind to me in my interactions with them, but from a football standpoint, boy, am I glad we're not entering another Dolphin season with the polarizing discussion about Tannehill's worthiness as Miami's QB. With all of that out of the way, let's get to the first storyline. It's all about the quarterback. Josh Rosen versus Ryan Fitzpatrick is far and away the top storyline entering the 2019 season for the Miami Dolphins. And in reality, it's really less about Fitzpatrick and all about Rosen. Rosen has one season, and yet it's yet to be determined how many games in said season that he'll earn the opportunity to play. But in theory, he has 16 regular season games to let the Dolphins coaching staff, front office, his teammates, and fans know whether he's in it for the long haul or whether the team needs to address the position in next year's draft. It's as simple as that, a one-year tryout to prove his worth. Will the organization see enough upside to determine he's the quarterback they want to build the future around, or will things not work out for Rosen in a second consecutive season and with a second team after being selected with the 10th overall pick in the 2018 NFL Draft? Because if Rosen doesn't impress, the Dolphins will then be able to make an educated decision regarding how they approach the draft in 2020. Depending on Rosen's performance, he could either become the franchise's QB we've all been waiting for since Dan Marino retired, or we could all be clamoring for the next hot draft prospect like Tua Tagovailoa, Justin Herbert, Jake Fromm, or whichever other QB impresses on the college gridiron this year. Another element to the Rosen situation is certainly whether or not he wins the job outright following the preseason. Many would argue that his potential inability to beat out Fitzpatrick will tell us all we need to know about his future with the team. At one point during this offseason, I felt strongly about this, that we might as well start planning for the draft if Rosen can't win the job over Ryan Fitzpatrick. However, I won't say that Rosen definitively will not turn into the Dolphins' next QB if Fitzpatrick wins the job to begin the year. Rosen hypothetically could play well when given his opportunity, and there will be pressure on Brian Flores to play the best quarterback in order to maintain credibility in the locker room early on in his rookie campaign as a head coach. But it would be a major, major disappointment and certainly a discouraging sign for those rooting for Rosen to grab the reins of this team if he doesn't earn that starting job from day one. There will be so much focus on the quarterback position, but there are many other intriguing storylines for this new Dolphin season, including the Brian Flores era officially getting underway. I'm excited about this hire for the Miami Dolphins. I really liked what we saw and heard from Flores during the offseason. He had a terrific example to learn from in Bill Belichick and in just being around the New England Patriots organization. He's worked his way up and has experience both as a scout and a coach. Every player willing to go on record that's been around Flores has a deep amount of respect for him as a coach, leader, and person. And despite all the discussion this offseason about tanking or rebuilding, despite the makeup of a roster that anyone can admit is flawed and not stocked with a lot of top-end talent, Flores has been steadfast in his public comments about the team that he is here to win. Not eventually, but right now. Here's a quote in Armando Salguero's conversation with Flores about what he's communicated to Stephen Ross. Quote, "I say what I've said since day one and in every conversation I've had with him, which is we're going to go out and try to win every game. That's the goal. That's the objective really every week. That's my thought. If you don't have that approach, then you'll never reach your goals," end quote. Now, we can all debate how good or bad this team is going to be, and most level-headed observers will tell you this will be a rebuilding season for the Dolphins that likely won't feature an overabundance of wins, but Flores is saying all the right things, and I appreciate that about him. You can't begin his tenure and create change from a cultural perspective by giving the outward impression that his team won't try hard or win many games as part of some process. He has to set the tone from the outset, and so far he's doing a good job. Let's see how that progresses during training camp and the regular season, but I certainly hope that Stephen Ross and the franchise as a whole remain patient with Flores because he appears to have plenty of upside as a head coach. Next up, where will the pass rush come from? Gone is Cam Wake and his 98 career sacks, including 6 last season. Gone is Robert Quinn and his team-high 6.5 sacks last year. Andre Branch was also let go during this offseason. The Dolphins have 0 established pass rushers on the roster entering 2019. In fact, their leading returning sacker is linebacker Jerome Baker with 3. And their second leading returning sacker is a defensive back in Bobby McCain with 2 quarterback takedowns, also tied with Vincent Taylor and Akeem Spence, to be fair, with 2. So that's it. The bottom line, how will they generate a pass rush this season? That is the task left to new defensive coordinator Patrick Graham and to Flores. We do know that the Dolphins provide a phenomenal opportunity for players looking to make a name for themselves as pass rushers. So who's going to take advantage? Will it be former first-round pick Charles Harris, who has 3 career sacks in 2 seasons? Will it be Nate Orchard, or Jonathan Woodard, or Tank Carradine, or Andrew Van Ginkel, or a big defensive tackle like Christian Wilkins, Devon Godshaw, or Taylor, or someone even further under the radar that we're not talking about? All I know is someone needs to step up. Otherwise, it is going to be a long season for this defense. Staying on that side of the ball, how will the coaching staff maximize the talent in the secondary? You can make a strong argument that the Dolphins secondary features the most talent of any group on the roster. Xavier Howard is coming off Pro Bowl and second-team All-Pro selections in 2018 and signed a massive and deserved contract extension in the offseason. Rashad Jones has been a Pro Bowler, perennial playmaker, and one of the Dolphins' best players since being drafted in 2010. TJ McDonald is one of the hardest hitters in the league, period. Bobby McCain was given a big deal last offseason that made him one of the highest-paid slot corners in football and appears to be getting work at safety as well. And Minkah Fitzpatrick is a Swiss Army knife of a defender that seemingly is a perfect fit, matching up all over the secondary in a Patriot-style defense. There are a few questions I have here. 1, who plays on the boundary corner opposite Howard? It could be Eric Rowe, McCain, Fitzpatrick, or another young player that surprises and impresses in the preseason. Number 2, where will the Dolphins line up versatile defenders like McCain, Fitzpatrick, and Jones? And 3, will they be able to maximize all of the talent by putting everyone in the most advantageous position to positively impact the team? And will everyone be happy with their role? There are plenty of questions to be answered, but there is also an abundance of talent to utilize for this Dolphins defensive coaching staff. All right, let's switch to the offense. Next storyline, Kenyon Drake's role. How will the Dolphins' dynamic running back be utilized in the upcoming season? Will it be the same old story with a new coaching staff, or will Chad O'Shea, the new offensive coordinator, get more from an extremely talented player? Drake averaged just 7.5 carries per game and 3.3 receptions per game last season. That's 10.8 offensive touches per contest, yet he still led the team with 9 total touchdowns while averaging 4.5 yards per carry. He was a wildly productive player for them last year despite the limited opportunities. This was a maddening situation all of last year, with Adam Gase stubbornly refusing to use Drake as more than just a part-time player. Will that change with an offensive system that typically has used multiple backs in New England? I can't wait to find out. Next one, Albert Wilson's health. It's safe to assume that Wilson will be brought back with caution following a serious hip injury last October, and that's the prudent thing to do from the Dolphins' perspective. But I am anxious to see if he can return to the form we saw him pre-injury. Remember, he was Miami's most explosive offensive player through 7 games, compiling 26 receptions for 391 yards and 4 touchdowns. He was a big play waiting to happen. He scored receiving touchdowns of 43, 75, 74, and 29 yards in length, and he also threw a 52-yard touchdown to Jakeem Grant. If he can come back and play at the same level as we witnessed last season, the Dolphins have a major weapon returning to this offense. Next up, how will the offensive line come together? This has been a storyline for the Dolphins seemingly in perpetuity, right? I can't remember the last time the team entered a season without any questions regarding the offensive line. This current incarnation will feature Laramie Tunsil at left tackle and Daniel Kilgore at center. Those appear to be the only guarantees. I'm assuming Jesse Davis will start. The question is whether it's at right guard or at right tackle. Jordan Mills will be given every opportunity to fill the void left by the departed Jawan James. And it will likely be a battle between rookie Michael Dieter and veteran Chris Reed at left guard. And it goes without saying that this group's effectiveness will be vital for a proper evaluation of Josh Rosen whenever he gets on the field. Next, can past disappointments turn into productive members of this Dolphins team? I'm looking at you, Devontae Parker, and you, Charles Harris, and you, Mike Gesicki, those 3 specifically. We all know the story with Parker. Massive upside because of his God-given combination of size, speed, and athleticism. How many times have Dolphins fans collectively pegged him as a breakout candidate since being selected with the 14th overall pick in 2015? Pretty much every year, and it is yet to come to fruition. There have been pesky, lingering injuries. There were concerns about his maturity and professionalism early on. Then last season, there seemed to be some sort of grudge held against him by Adam Gase with an odd public criticism of Gase by Parker's agent. Listen, the bottom line is Miami brought him back on a team-friendly contract to see if this new coaching staff can get the most out of an undeniably talented but maddeningly inconsistent player. Can't wait to see what happens with him. Next is Harris. He's just 3 sacks, as we already mentioned, in 2 seasons since being taken with the 22nd overall pick in 2017. Considering what I've already detailed about the lack of bona fide pass rushers on this roster, there are no excuses for Harris. If he can't produce this season, considering the opportunities we assume he will have, then the Dolphins have a bust on their hands. I'm hoping he can break out because by all accounts, he's a guy that is a good guy, a hard worker, well-liked. It's put up or shut up time for Harris in 2019, who has the benefit of working with what I perceive as a much more competent defensive coaching staff in 2019. Finally, let's get to Gesicki. 22 catches, 202 yards, and 0 touchdowns in his rookie campaign after being selected in the 2nd round. The lack of touchdowns is really what stands out to me because that's the one element I thought he would provide. An athletic, tall, rangy target in the red zone, and the production just wasn't there. Do we blame this on Adam Gase's play calling? Do we blame it on adjusting to the NFL game as a rookie? Or, as I heard through some people who are close to the team last season, they aren't convinced that he's going to be very good after seeing him every day in person. I hope that's not the case, but whatever is the case, we need to find out this year about Gesicki, Harris, and Parker. All right, next up, what kind of impact will be made by the rookie class? It features draft picks Christian Wilkins, Michael Dieter, Andrew Van Ginkel, Isaiah Prince, Chandler Cox, and Myles Gaskin. Who steps up from this group? There's a terrific opportunity with this stripped-down roster to make an impact. I'm looking, though, primarily at Wilkins. Can he make his presence felt on the field with production and in the locker room as a leader, as he proclaimed was his goal immediately after being drafted? We will see from him very, very soon. And finally, I'll wrap it up with this. How will we judge this season? We have navigated an offseason in which tanking was a buzzword and a topic widely discussed, and then that has transitioned to rebuilding being the appropriate way to describe the current state of affairs for the Miami Dolphins. But it begs the question for the media and for fans alike. Are you reprogramming your expectations compared to years past? And will you be recalibrating your mindset as it pertains to the win-loss record for the Dolphins in 2019? My feeling is that most are, and that witnessing steady progress in the development of young players who can be key cogs on future teams will be satisfying for many fans, even if it comes with few wins. But this will be an ongoing back and forth for many throughout the season, and I'm fascinated to see how it potentially adjusts during the year, especially in the hypothetical scenario that Rosen doesn't impress. and losses late in the season become all too important for draft positioning. In conclusion, I'm thrilled, as I'm sure many of you are as well, to have football back. And it will be another intriguing season for the Miami Dolphins and their fans for many of the reasons I just detailed.